Here's a hard truth about learning skills. Most people never actually start the skill they think they're learning. They start this vague idea. I'm gonna learn Spanish. I wanna get better at guitar. I wanna improve my communication. But vague goals create vague practices, and vague practice creates frustration. So when the excitement fades, which it will, people restart. Not because they lack discipline, but because they never defined the skill in the first place. Here's what most people do when they try to pick a new skill. They get excited, they pick something they want to learn. Maybe it's drawing, maybe it's coding, maybe it's learning a new language. So first thing they do is open up YouTube and search how to learn blah, 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 blah. They find a tutorial, follow the steps, try the drills. At first, it actually feels like progress because they finally started. And kudos to starting. You know, a lot of people don't start, so kudos to you. But then a few days later, maybe a week later, the progress slows down. Something stops clicking, maybe it's drills, feels confusing, maybe it's the tutorial skipped steps, or maybe you don't understand something even though they're explaining first principles. Maybe you're like, how does this work with this? Don't these contradict? Whatever the case may be, what do most people do when they're in this situation? They go back to YouTube and they start searching, how do I find this? Or new tutorial, new method, how do I learn this? And they approach the cycle and they do it over. And then the same thing happens, they don't understand something, and then they approach in the same cycle. And this is what people call tutorial hell. And here's the problem. It's not that people aren't trying. It's not that tutorials are bad. Most of them teach the same core principles and the same fundamentals. It's just, the issue is just people try to follow these lessons without really having a clear structure to practice. So instead of making clear, steadily progress and getting stuck and figuring out why they're stuck, they get stuck, not really understanding the skill, and they restart and they repeat the cycle. But once you understand why this happens, you'll realize that restarting skills or giving up on skills is mainly a structure problem and not a motivation problem or whatever other problem you think it is. And the reason this keeps happening isn't just about tutorials. It starts even earlier with how you define the skill itself when you first want to learn it. Here's why that restart cycle keeps happening. It's not that you lack motivation, and it's not that tutorials are bad. You know, the real problem starts when you don't really define the skill you're trying to learn. When you say vague stuff like, I want to get better at drawing, I want to be able to speak Spanish or speak another language, I want to improve my communications, you're not really describing the skill or the actions or the stuff you're going to do. You're describing the outcomes. And when your goal is this vague outcome that I want to get better at X, and you don't have a real idea what that looks like, your brain doesn't know what to do. And then it just repeats, I want to get better at X, so I'm going to keep searching how to get better at X without having real structure. But here's the key insight. Your problem isn't motivation or anything else. Your problem is structure. A real skill isn't this vague idea that we always do. I want to get better at X. It's clear, repeatable practice that you can build and understand over time. And once you define that practice and you know what that practice is, then you can start making progress steadily and finally start to improve on the skill. So if the real problem is that most people never define the skill, the next step is learning how to turn this vague goal, vague idea into something you can actually practice. That way you can escape tutorial hell by turning the skill into something clear, repeatable, and something you can practice where there's structure and no vague goals, and you have a specific action you can repeat consistently so you can make progress. And you can apply this to any goal. And as you keep repeating the same action over time, you'll constantly get better versus the other people who are constantly searching for new information and constantly stuck in that tutorial hell. Without building real structure, you're always going to be in this tutorial hell and you're always going to be stuck there. And I don't want you to be stuck there. I want you to actually improve on your skills. When the action isn't clear, your brain is like looking for answers. They're like, okay, bro, this guy seems, and a lot of people on YouTube, you can find say, this is the best way, or they have a different method that goes against what you learned earlier. But since you don't have the structure, you don't have the discernment to tell the difference. And that's what the problem is. And then you start thinking, maybe I'm doing this wrong. Maybe this skill's not for me. Maybe I don't have an affinity for the skill. All wrong, by the way. So instead of practicing, you're stuck in this research mode of watching more videos, reading more advice. But most people give up way before they get really deep into this. So it's either quit or keep researching and being stuck in this loop. And that's why you have to structure and you have to define the skill clearly and have structure. So here's a simple way to do it. Take the skill you want to learn and let's turn it into a clear, repeatable action. Let's take ventriloquism, for example. When I was learning ventriloquism, of course, I searched it up like everybody else. But if you think about it, once you have structure and you understand what you want to look for, you can watch a lot of videos, get stuck and get stuck in tutorial hell. But first, you want to understand the structure of the video. So at its core, ventriloquism is two things. Is learning to talk without really moving your lips and sounding clearly. If you break it down to its first principles, of course there's other things, but let me just simplify it for you. So before you try full phrases or before you jump steps or talk with the doll or whatever, you start with the letters. First, you practice the ones that are easy, so there's labials and non-labials. So labials like A, C, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, N, and you can go all the way up to Z, right? And then labials are M, N, F, right? Those are harder. So first you want to learn labials, and then you want to learn non-labials, and then eventually you can practice short phrases without moving your lips, like, hello, how are you? It all started on a rainy night, right? And then you can practice longer phrases. And I just do the lip thing because it helps me remind me, don't let my lips touch. There's probably different ways you could do it. But you see how when you have those clear, now I have a clear structure. Practice learning the non-labials. Now, every day I have a clear action. Practice learning non-labials. When I get all the non-labials, now I can practice the next labials. And then now I have clear practice. And then when I improve those two, well, what's the next structure? Oh, move into short phrases, move into this. And you see I have a clear structure. And if I get stuck, I can search the specific problem I have instead of searching new ways to learn ventriloquism and constantly researching or even giving up on the skill. And that's what I want you to do with any skill. Now you understand what I mean when I say it's not a motivation problem, or it's not a discipline problem or information problem. The problem is just having these vague idea of the skill and not breaking it down to its first principles and not understanding the steps you're supposed to do. Look for actions, look for repeated steps you can do and build that structure. You don't need to have the whole roadmap, that would be nice, but you don't need to have the whole thing in the beginning. Just having a couple steps ahead, understanding where you are in the foundational phases, the beginning steps you should work on, just like I broke it down with the ventriloquism skill, makes it so much easier for you to learn the skill and helps you avoid a lot of bullshit that people are in. And that's why people think skills take so long, because they don't understand this. So if there's a skill you want to learn, try this. Take your vague goal and turn it into repeatable actions. Have a clear structure that you can practice every day. It doesn't need to be perfect. You know, it just has to be clear enough so you can practice. Because if you don't practice, how are you going to keep getting better? And if you keep searching new stuff, you're going to be stuck in the loop. And I don't want you to be stuck in the loop. So keep practicing. As always, if you have any questions, let me know down below. And until next time, YOLO out.